What's up, everybody? I want to take a second to explain the name of this channel. I know it's a little goofy, but it also represents a core principle of life that I've chosen to adopt and make it part of the way that I view the world. I think a lot of people will tell you that you want balance in your life. And I understand maybe the sentiment behind saying something like that. But when you really think about it, that's maybe not the best approach to anything. Most of all, because we're not balanced inside. So I think trying to make something outside of us that is inconsistent with what's inside of us is a pretty impossible task, because there's no blueprint riding around in who we are to be able to replicate that. Who we are is built-in imperfections. Who we are has built-in flaws and also unbalanced strengths to match. You know, most people, their biggest strength or their character trait that they're most proud of also has a half of it or another side to it that is often the thing that holds them back the most, or that they're most ashamed of. And it's important that we are built like that, and we're built like that for a reason. And every single human being is slightly different in their pronounced traits, both good and bad. And if that's how we're made up, and that's what we consist of on the inside, trying to build things or achieve things outside of ourselves that are inconsistent with that is a nearly impossible task. And it's also, balance itself is also a downgraded dimensionality of thought. And a way you can think about that is, the first dimension is like a dot on a piece of paper. And the second dimension is a second dot on that same piece of paper with a line connecting the two of them. And then the third dimension is a branch off of that line to a third dot. And so now you have length, width, and depth. And, a level up from that would be length, width, depth, and then time. And that's the most interesting part about where we live as human beings. We have a relationship with time, and it's kind of a fluid one. Yes, we can measure a clock by seconds and minutes in a very exact way. But the truth is, if you're a person who's lived through an event that was either exciting or traumatic, time has a way of bending. It can take a second, can feel like minutes. And if you're with somebody you really like, or in an experience you're fully immersed in, minutes can feel like seconds. And so it's kind of weird how we have that relationship with time. How that pertains to balance is because we have imperfections, and because time has a fluid relationship with us, trying to take this binary and rather strict approach to our perception of what balance means and how we're going to put it out in the world is too rigid. And it makes it impossible, and it makes it very hard, because if you're a person who ends up trying to ascertain balance or replicate balance, you find yourself in double binds constantly. You find yourself torn between things constantly. It becomes difficult to make decisions. It becomes difficult to make commitments. If you do, they're temporary, or they don't feel right when you're doing them, so it's impossible to be present. And you end up in this conversation with yourself, or a mental dialogue where the pattern is scarcity or lack. And it detaches you from presence, which detaches you from your intuition or spirit, or from phenomenons that make you, feel romantic about life or feel like life is positive. And you want as much presence as possible. You want as much attachment to, that little voice in you as possible, because that's what makes life interesting. It's what keeps you attached to what's going on around you. And it's your internal guidance system to some degree, And so the more you can strengthen the bond with that thing via how you approach balance is important. And taking into account our fluid relationship with time will allow you to see and define balance in a way that maybe you didn't before. So here's how you can really define balance. When you are a person made with imperfections and imbalances in your nature. If that's the case, then balance really doesn't look like equality, which is what most people think balance is. Balance is actually a matter of timing, and it's a matter of extremism. And so it's about being extreme at the right times. Here's what I mean by that. You could have 6 items, and someone says divide those equally. Well, on a surface level, someone might put 3 on one side and 3 on another side and call that equal. Well, let's say all 3 of those things are human beings. Can you still put 3 and 3 on each side and make it equal? We all played dodgeball as a kid or team sports as a child in school. Is it always fair or balanced even though the teams have equal numbers? It's a little more complex than that, isn't it? And so life is very much like that. And I think we get tricked into, people who have this like guru approach or guru mentality to life where everything has to be balanced. And that's the only way you'll ever be happy is if things are balanced. And the truth is, nothing is balanced about our human experience. And if you can kind of structure how you approach things to play to your strengths, it's going to change the quality of life that you're having. I think that's super significant because if you can redefine your relationship with balance into defining it as a relationship with timing, you can start to play to those strengths or those internal imbalances in a more fluid way and in a more, interesting and romantic way that yields you better results and doesn't ultimately put you in those double binds that leaves you feeling lack and scarcity, because those are the things that really rob you of a good experience in life. And they rob you from even playing to your strengths. It's just a bad tactical decision to begin with if you really want to think about it in a more cut and dry way. And so what that extremism might look like for you is understanding, if I'm a person who derives a lot of peace, internal peace, emotional peace, and joy from being physical, then balance in my life might look different from another me where they're deriving all that balance and joy from something that's mentally stimulating. So balance for me won't look like 5 days of working out and then 5 days of not. It'll look more like maybe we do some kind of workout every day. And then, I still have a mental side to me, but maybe we do those mental things once or twice a week. And for the other version of me, the guy who's the fictitious version that's mostly mental, maybe that guy needs to go do something small and mental every single day and something physical 2 or 3 times a week to counterbalance. And that's kind of the way to think about it, is are you playing to your strengths? And most importantly, are you playing with timing? Because here's where it really gets important. Your environment and the story of your life is constantly changing. And so your actions and your approach needs to reflect that. And people who are constantly striving for that 2-dimensional perception of balance are always going to get caught off guard by the happenings and changes of life because their plan doesn't account for something like that. And what they really need to understand, and what really needs to be understood by all of us, and is just knowing that when life is a changing environment, how you define balance needs to change in accordance with that changing environment. And so what that might look like is there's going to be times in your life where you're very healthy. And maybe in the example of working out, it might be appropriate and it might be balanced to work out every day. And there's going to be times in your life where you might be going through a health crisis or, something is going on in your life financially where that requires an inordinate amount of your time and attention. And then you're going to have to shift and counterbalance into what's appropriate for that moment. And that doesn't necessarily need to mean that life dictates your priorities or dictates who you are, but rather how you respond And the effect that that has on you emotionally is more than just equality. It's more than just 3 and 3 on each side. It's more than just always living a perfectly 50-50 life on everything, because that's what balance is. What it really is timing. What it really is playing to the tune of the music that's going on. And you'd look really goofy if you were on a dance floor and people were playing rock music and you're dancing like ballroom. And the reverse is true. If they switched it to rock, or if they switched it to ballroom music, and you're sitting there headbanging and everyone's done up in their, dress clothes and being aristocratic, you're going to look a little out of place. And a lot of us, when we first learn what balance is, we're that guy. We're trying to do that because we got to be headbanging half the time and we got to be ballroom dancing half the time. And the truth is, you just need to listen to the music and what's going on and respond accordingly. It's easy to be present when you're doing that. And that is what yields you a better life experience. And when you can couple that with a self-awareness of knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, it even levels up even more how appropriately you can act for what the moment calls for in your life. So I hope this was helpful to somebody. I hope it redefines what you think balance is. I think it's okay to be an extremist. I'm definitely an extremist, and I think the timing of when and how you're extreme is the most important thing, because ultimately you can change who you are. There's pieces of you can change, but there's also pieces of you that you cannot. And one of the things you cannot change is the fact that you have a strength and the fact that you have a weakness. What they are, those are things you can maybe train in yourself. But the fact that there's an imbalance present in who you are as a person is a universal truth for people. And I think embracing that and acting accordingly is something that makes life much more enjoyable and thrilling. And it just adds another dimension to it that's all the more entertaining and keeps you wrapped up in what's really going on. And so if you can do that, it'll probably yield you a better life experience. It certainly has for me. Hope this helps somebody. It's just my personal perspective. And I'll see you guys on the next one.